And now for my opening statement. Some things are irrefutable. War is war, a rose is just a rose, and Chris Kyle is a true American hero. And I, for one, am sick and tired of people who aren't worthy of carrying his backpack, taking cheap shots at him and the other heroes who go to war, many returning with fewer limbs to do what has to be done to protect the rest of us. Yesterday, I was in Dallas, Texas, and I was struck by this white flag, mostly because white flags usually connote surrender. But on this flag, underneath the Lone Star and a cannon, the words, "Come and take it," a symbol of true Texan defiance. It was 1835, a small group of Texans, real men with a clear mission, willing to die for the freedom of others. And fast forward more than 175 years, another Texan with similar DNA in his veins, this one a sniper, Chris Kyle. And on his arm, a Crusader cross tattooed in red because he wanted everyone to know that he was a Christian. Yet leftist Michael Moore, who wouldn't last one day in basic training, let alone Navy SEAL training, says snipers are cowards and shoot people in the back, and certainly not heroes. And although he backed off a little bit, that's what he said. And that the movie American Sniper has shattered January box office records is testament to the chord that it struck in the heart of America. Not just Americans in the heartland, but those in blue states and big cities as well. What was real about Chris Kyle was his focus on God, country, and family, his unquestioning patriotism and determination. 4 tours in Iraq. Yes, he wrote that he regretted not having killed more of the savages who were plotting day in and day out to kill Americans. He was a straight shooter who took no prisoners. And he resented the political rules of engagement established by, as he put it, some fat-ass congressman sitting in a leather chair smoking a cigar in a D.C. air-conditioned office telling him when he could and couldn't shoot the enemy. There was no vacillation, no dithering, no hesitation, and no regret. He was the unapologetic warrior. That we should have leaders like Chris Kyle. This week, our leader gave his State of the Union, saying this about the war on terror.
We are 15 years into this new century. 15 years that dawned with terror touching our shores. But tonight, we turn the page.
Yet take a look at this week's headlines. Should I believe my leader or my lying eyes? And our commander-in-chief also talked about American strength and diplomacy.
We're demonstrating the power of American strength and diplomacy.
You mean like this? Like how virtually every world leader, including ones that would bomb each other as soon as they were outside the Paris city limits, walking arm in arm in support of the Paris terror victims? No, Mr. President, it is people like Chris Kyle who demonstrate America's strength and, yes, diplomacy. Diplomacy is not just passive. It's being clear that we support our allies and follow through on our threats, like those pesky red lines that are being crossed. That's diplomacy. Now, Chris Kyle doubled down on what he did. He wasn't haunted by his kills, but instead haunted by his enemy's successes. And speaking of the enemy, the president says we've halted Iran's nuclear program.
Our diplomacy is at work with respect to Iran, where for the first time in a decade we've halted the progress of its nuclear program and reduced its stockpile of nuclear material.
But even the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee says that the president is yet again not telling the truth, but instead is taking his talking points straight out of the Tehran playbook. Chris Kyle was as clear as to who the enemy was. They were the ones his government sent him to kill. And Chris wasn't just good at his job, he was great at his job. A legend, the greatest sniper in American military history. Chris Kyle didn't start the war and he didn't end the war, but he volunteered to save American lives. And ironically, he died helping other servicemen suffering from PTSD. 22 veterans a day commit suicide, yet our commander-in-chief can't even run an agency honest enough to get veterans a doctor's appointment. There were no flags flying at half-mast in Washington when Chris Kyle died, but there should have been. But I am grateful to Michael Moore for one thing. Michael, you woke a sleeping giant, the American spirit, for far too long suppressed by people like you, the Hollywood elite, and the politicians who lied to us on a regular basis. Yes, Chris Kyle was an American hero who wore big boots, cowboy boots, Michael, boots which neither you nor any of your Hollywood friends could ever dream of filling. And that's my open.